Hello and welcome. Someone wrote asking if it would be useful and appropriate to offer the opportunity to practice meditation to people whom are in palliative care, so at the end stage of life with treatment just to assist with pain and relief prior to dying, we call palliative care, and with a view to practicing meditation techniques for the relief of anxiety and fear, maybe to assist with this pain. The Buddha taught this practice as a holistic approach of not just meditation, but, however, in conjunction with that, sila, moral virtue, meditation, samadhi, and panya, wisdom. This is the whole of the Noble Eightfold Path. Path, it is so called because it is the way leading to freedom from suffering, nibbana. Freedom from suffering in this material world of a physical body and a thinking brain, and all that entails, we call life, humanity, or even in other realms. For instance, all beings are subject to suffering as well as pleasures and joy in life. This we call samsara. Now, the reason I say this is because it would be, yes, very nice if people at the end stage of life had a practiced meditation technique, a faith, a confidence, we call saddha, in the teachings of the Buddha as our teacher, the teachings of the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, the lineage of monks whom have continued those teachings for so long in this lineage since the time of the Buddha, 2,567 years ago. If one could use that, it would be, and certainly is designed to, aid with the reduction of anxiety and fear towards the end of our lives, and therefore be a very good relief of suffering. But as we know, as practitioners of meditation, of samadhi, this part of the Buddha's teachings, this training, and it very much is a training, it isn't an instant thing, unlike, say, hypnosis, which one can give to another. One can perhaps use techniques to maybe hypnotize another person. One cannot meditate, give samadhi to another. Samadhi means deep, absorbed focus, more than concentration. So concentration implies a strained effort, whereas single-pointed focus on one meditation object can be quite relaxed in itself, rather than concentrated effort, but requires the effort, the determination to bring one's attention to one thing, one meditation object. When we try this, even the most intelligent people, the most skilled people, find it very difficult to keep a mind on one thing, to keep it from going into the future, from going into the past, but to stay on one object in the present moment, here and now. This is why it is called a practice. Time needs to be taken to establish a method, a technique, but more importantly, to follow the guidelines of the Buddha's teachings to arrive at a state whereby the body can just begin to settle, allowing it to become relaxed. The mind can have time to settle, allowing it to become calm. This is what the Buddha taught us. It requires practice over, in some cases, not so long, but in others maybe many years, to arrive at even the early stages of samadhi, single-pointed focus on a meditation object. So, as nice as it would be to introduce this to people at the end of life, knowing how hard, how difficult it is for us, whilst we're fit, healthy, and younger people in the prime of life, how difficult it is to do that, to keep our mind on one thing, to train our minds to focus on a meditation object, requires considerable effort, energy and practice. Of course, if you're experiencing significant pain, for which you may be having a multitude or a variety of means to relieve that pain, in terms of medical treatment and pain relief, drugs and this and that, and also the addition of maybe fear and anxiety to this point in your life, it's a very difficult time to expect somebody to be introduced for the first time to meditation. So this really does emphasize and reinforce the point the Buddha makes, that this is a training, it is a practice we put in place to be there and available to us. Those tools we gain, those tools we, from our experience in the practice, acquire, that can be used at that stage later on in life, but it would be quite difficult to introduce at this time. Now, however, this does not detract from the importance that it has for those carers, those caregivers, whom are able to practice by practicing all aspects of the Buddha's training, Sila, Samadhi, Panya, the whole of the Noble Eightfold Path. You will develop the qualities of metta, loving kindness, of karuna, compassion, of mudita, joy for others, not so much the important one in this case, but in fact it's an expression or a feeling of other people's, an empathy of other people's situation, an understanding, but also very importantly, upekkha, equanimity. Because equanimity you require to remain calm and stable, to be able to listen and appreciate what the person you're caring for really needs, rather than perhaps introducing your own ideas at this stage of meditation, which is good an idea as it may sound, for I think end life situations, it isn't too late, but it's a very difficult time to start. But you can use your skills as a meditator to be able to have extra amounts of care and compassion and understanding through those Brahma Viharas, those qualities of metta, karuna, mudita and upekkha. This means you can listen to what they are feeling, what they're experiencing. Introduce to them the idea of reflection is perhaps more an appropriate end stage scenario, introducing the idea of reflecting on all the good they have done in their lives. Because if they reflect on that, they can experience the pleasure, the happiness they gained at the time of doing that good all over again, from reminding them. We often forget what good we have done. Maybe if we're dwelling a little in the past, and at this point of life it can happen, dwelling in the past, It's no bad thing if you're dwelling on the good you have done, but it is quite pointless to dwell on the harm you may have caused or the less good. There's no constructive aspect of that. Reflect on the good you have done, the good you have experienced. It will increase the better feeling within oneself, both physically and mentally. So this is what one can very much more easily introduce to people at this time. And another point people have been seeming to make in various emails and comments and communications I've received is that in one case somebody is expressing their ideas in quite a long email, so I won't read that, but quite a long email with regards to their ideas about enlightenment, the first stage of enlightenment, sotapanna, which means stream entry. We are aiming through this practice to become liberated, free from suffering in this lifetime, free from what we call worldly ties or fetters, those things that tie us to being reborn into this cycle of rebirth, samsara, as I described, over and over again. If you're not interested in that side of Buddhism, that is okay, because one can take the attitude that until you experience that, it doesn't require a great deal of thought or concern. However, you will experience rebirth in each and every moment of your life. And if that isn't visible enough, you can take your own life experience as a school child, to an adolescent, to a young adult, to a middle-aged, to an elderly person, those changes in your life and your circumstances as evidence of a complete change in life within this very life itself. A process, a life process, which is what this physical body and this thinking brain consists of. Experiencing of seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and all phenomena is no different to that phenomena we might experience through meditation. Even the most experienced meditator may have experiences may experience phenomena of seeing light, seeing signs we call nimitta, hearing sounds, all kinds of wonderful experiences, but it is just that, phenomena. Eventually one can certainly, through deep states of absorption, attain to jhanas where one can be secluded of the hindrances of sensual desire, of ill will, so disliking, of laziness, tiredness, or lack of inclination to meditate, of restlessness and worry, thinking about the past, thinking about the future, and of doubt about the practice at all. One can become fully secluded from those. One can also become fully secluded from bodily experience, bodily feeling, and also mental, emotional experience can be reduced. All of these things can be gradually reduced through the practice of meditation to create what is a seemingly isolated experience, an island, a refuge in itself. And often people have described in these communications I read, maybe that meditation of that form is an escape, is not facing up to the responsibilities of life. Now, someone made a comment recently, which was a very long comment, in respect of, and asking me to, I think there were some question marks in there. With some difficulty I found some questions, it wasn't clear, so I won't read that now, but really discussing both modern Buddhism, old Buddhism, in comparison with and debating it against secular political conventions or structures, societal ways. They're basically how society in different cultures is run, uses, treats religion. Anyway, going into very in-depth discussion and debate, it isn't necessary. We just only need to understand the teachings of the Buddha in terms of the Noble Eightfold Path to realize that whether it's religious or non-religious, these two are conventions. So he was equating the idea of monastics, so monks and nuns, escaping into monasticism, so going to live either in solitude or in communities, to escape from the pain and suffering of societal life. Equating that with the use of, say, medical treatment or drugs or alcohol or entertainment or absorption in political debate to try and change the world as the secular alternative. And modern day, perhaps, Buddhist organizations that are to some extent linked with that and a combination of the two. I'm not concerned with this, and as a practitioner, you need not be either. We should be concerned with only our own practice. Like samadhi is not like hypnosis. We cannot change the world, but what we can do, what the Buddha strived to do, was to show us how we can change ourselves. And the evidence we show by our changes, our liberation, our own liberation, is what encourages others to try those very same teachings of the Buddha. I come from a different background to where I'm living now, from a place where Buddhism is not evident at all. I had to dig very deep to find it, and in a culture which is not reflective of the Noble Eightfold Path at all. But I saw enough evidence in the monks I met, the people leading this life, to show me that one could change. One can change oneself. And in that respect, you know you can do it. And if you change, others can also. Now that can be done. There will always be suffering. The Buddha has taught us this as the first of the Four Noble Truths. There is suffering, a cause of suffering, an end of suffering, and that path, the Noble Eightfold Path, leading to the end of suffering. This is what we need to fully understand. You can write as long a comment or email as you like with regards to Theravada Buddhism in Myanmar, Sri Lanka, Thailand, or New York, comparing those to political systems of different cultures, countries. It's all convention. But each individual within those establishments or organizations or living around conventions that surround them is responsible for their own actions, their own karma, and will be the heirs, the beneficiaries of those actions, that karma we call vipaka. We are the results of causes and conditions we put in place here and now. This is why in the case of palliative care, if we're putting in the causes and conditions here and now to be able to develop very satisfactory levels of samadhi into the jhanas, when our time comes, dying will be easier. We are rehearsing, practicing to die. People may be taking exams and they revise and they practice and they learn as much as they can and they study very, very diligently to pass their exams. The same with passing to drive a car, to learn to drive a car and pass a driving test. You practice. Even a wedding, to get married, you have rehearsals and you practice. Now, what practice are you putting in towards your absolute, for sure, inevitable death? Probably none, if you're not a Buddhist practitioner. You put it off as something that's not to be really even thought about or dwelt upon. But considering it is the most likely scenario, the only thing we can be sure of, it is something we should, whilst we have the energy and the ability, to train ourselves to be accepting of. When we develop through sila, moral virtue, and samadhi, meditation, panya, which is wisdom, we actually see and learn that each and every moment of our experience is very hard to pin down to one particular moment. Take a year, to a month, to a week, to a day, to an hour, to a minute, to a second, to something smaller and smaller and smaller. What is there? Like a physical thing, you cut it in half, you can only cut it in half so many times until you reach an atom, which means it cannot be broken or cut anymore. Even that has been discovered not to be so. An atom can be split. What happens? A huge amount of energy is released that holds what isn't an actually tangible physical thing. One thing, it's whatever, a neutron and a proton spinning around each other or something like that. This can even be split. Time itself, again, is just a convention. Do we go around arguing about it? No. No point, is there? So likewise, really, arguing about conventions of other, even less tangible forms, like organized religions, modern or old, or societal structures, is impossible to ever arrive at a conclusion. We can only go so far. But what is time? We get down to this very, very minuscule moment. We can then very clearly see this process, this flow. So when you die, at the end of life, what dies, this physical body, this collection of atoms, then cells and organs, ceases to work, as does this thinking brain. But is that it? Or something that moves on? That is for another talk. That is for the understanding that will come from the practice, but can be seen experientially for yourself if you develop samadhi. However, it's been implied in some things I've read from contributors here that when you achieve these stages of samadhi, approaching jhanas, seclusion from the hindrances, the bodily feelings and the mental distractions, that you are at some level of enlightenment, say sotapanna. Now, a sotapanna, a stream enterer, means you have, in fact, absolutely accepted that you are just the result of causes and conditions that you have put in place, and that there is no self. You have no personality view, whether it's of your physical body, your thinking brain, intellectual abilities, knowledge, status in life, even nationality, gender. All of these aspects are just a vehicle, but are not what you are. There is not an absence of self, but what you see, experience as this self is anicca, impermanent. As impermanent as the moment that can't even be defined in this nanosecond, tiny micro moment moving from one to another. We're only alive for as far as we can be sure this breath only. Now, this understanding of not self, also a full comprehension, but not just knowing intellectually, but recognizing suffering through experience, through seeing the others that are suffering, and the rest of the Four Noble Truths, the cause of that suffering, desire, that there can be an end to this suffering through this path leading to the end of suffering, the Four Noble Truths, and that only we can do this, each for ourselves, not for others. It cannot be transmitted to others. It's not a magic healing like hypnosis I transmit to you. You can share, we can have guided meditation to help train people to do it for themselves, meditate for themselves, as people have guided us, taught us to meditate for ourselves. Knowing this, we can practice for ourselves to become free from suffering in this lifetime, and have no doubt about that, and no need to practice rites and rituals, we term these things as, but not to be confused with maybe some pleasantries of puja, offering flowers, incense, candles, for instance, in the temple, bowing to a Buddha statue. These are physical manifestations of ourselves paying homage to the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, by way of helping to mindfully train ourselves in a physical way and remind ourselves in a physical way of doing good results in good things happening. A physical manifestation of good karma, because we know that good karma, good actions, produces good vipaka, good results. But that is not to be used as something we think is being done to get benefit from. It isn't going to make us pass that driving test, pass those exams, get a promotion at work. Just because you offer more flowers one day, it doesn't mean that you're going to have a lucky week and win the lottery. You're offering flowers because it's a mindful way of respecting. It's actually to signify purity. It's a reminder of our sila, moral virtue. So this is the three fetters that we have to cut out, not just trim like a plant that can grow back, but remove from the root. That is, personality view, any doubt about the Four Noble Truths, so basically the doubt that there's any suffering, thinking that this life is great, because however great this life may seem at the moment, you're still going to die. There still will be suffering. There will be, as where there's gain, there is loss. Where there's praise, there is blame. All of these things have a negative side. There is suffering, no doubt about that. And we've cut this attachment to the belief in a higher power, rites and rituals, something else will help us, and fully understand we only can do this for ourselves. So, however wonderful your meditation experiences might be, you won't necessarily have attained to any stage of enlightenment. Only through the eradication of those three fetters have you attained to any stage of enlightenment, sotapanna. And also, as sotapanna, knowing there's no understanding that you are not this personality, understanding the Four Noble Truths and abandoning rites and rituals, you are unable to break the 5 precepts. In other words, do either harm to yourself intentionally or harm to others intentionally. And this, sila, the no killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying or taking of intoxicants, is the very foundation and basis on which this practice has to be established. Without that, it doesn't matter what you achieve in jhana, you're not enlightened without sila. This is why it is a holistic practice. Without sila, you will not attain to the highest states of meditation, and those you attain to are just phenomena, just experiences, which you can get through other means, other sources. Watching a good movie, reading a book, can give people an illusion of calmness, peace, help them take their mind off the past, off the future, and into the moment of the movie or the book that they're reading. For instance, through imagination, one can sit and speculate on all kinds of subject matter rather than be actually meditating and allowing the mind to be clear in its natural, uncluttered state, where there is samatha, tranquility, peace, allowing for vipassana, the seeing clearly of what life really is, what this experience really is. Just eyes seeing light, ears hearing sound, noses smelling odours, tongues tasting, the body feeling and experiencing, and our minds thinking over and over and over about all of this. We can allow all this to settle through this practice. This allows us to develop panya, wisdom. So when in this correspondence people consider either their own meditation or people who maybe are meditating as escaping, this is misunderstood. We first practice meditation not to escape. Also, we may ordain. We may go all out with this practice and ordain as a monk or a nun, but it is not to escape. It is to face head-on our fears, our anxieties. It is to face head-on, without distraction, pain and suffering. It is to see it in the raw and to experience it for what it is. If you disbelieve that, go and stay in a monastery for a few days. Live with monks. See how you like it, without your phone, without your comfortable bed, without food in the afternoon, without music, without perfume, without a change of clothes, just basically what you need, some pajama-like outfit. Very simplistic, uncomfortable existence, exposing you to the raw feelings that you can experience with your body, the sights, the sounds, the smells, the tastes, and letting you really see how your mind reacts to that. Is that escaping? No, what escaping is sitting in your comfortable apartment, watching your large television, listening to music, sleeping in your comfortable bed, snuggling up with your loving partner, loving and adoring your family. Nothing wrong with these things. But at that point, we don't want to be reflecting on theirs or our deaths. But alone, a life of solitude, or in a community of monks, there's plenty of time to reflect on death Maranusati, reflection on death. It's an important part of our practice. Not to be morbid, this isn't to put you off the practice, but it's to see the realistic side of it. So, it isn't an escape from either politics or financial systems or all that's been mentioned in communications I've received. But those things can be seen as very insignificant parts of our existence. After all, those things have always been there, but do not continue. They're always changing. What has continued to be the same, remained the same, for longer than any other convention, even if it is called a convention in itself, is the Dharma, the teachings of the Buddha. Because for 2,567 years in the Vinaya Pitaka, which is the rules laid down by the Buddha in terms of the way both monks and nuns have to conduct themselves and live, there are the same precepts that lay people, lay Buddhist practitioners keep to, just 5, no killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying or taking of intoxicants, and these have not changed for all of this time because they work. So everything else is unimportant. Now someone might say, yes, but Theravada Buddhism in this particular city, this is going on currently. There's this argument about this. That doesn't matter. What matters is what you are doing here and now at the moment. How long are you meditating each day? Are you keeping 5 precepts? What is the effect on you of this? What are you seeing as a result of this? If you're not keeping 5 precepts and you're not meditating, the result and what you're seeing will be 0. This is why meditation cannot be isolated in Buddhism, isn't isolated as the experience. Where it is separated from a foundation, a basis of moral virtue, and where it is treated as an experiential thing in terms of really benefiting from the phenomena, it isn't a bad thing because it is a third of the practice, and often a very major part of the practice, especially in Buddhist countries. They tend not to do so much. And in non-Buddhist countries, they may do a lot more of the meditation third and less of the sila and the panya, the moral virtue and the wisdom side. And in Buddhist countries, a lot of the sila, or try, and the panya, the virtue and the wisdom side, and not so much of the meditation. But it doesn't matter. It's each of us on our own. Because that's where we'll be, who we'll be with when we die, on our own. Just that. This body will cease to work, and this thinking brain will cease to work. If we are attached to this body in any way, and our opinions about this politician or this government or this country or this law or that, then we will still have attachment. We haven't let go of our ties, our fetters, our either liking or disliking to life itself. This is the propulsion, the momentum. Where that energy goes, that division is moved into rebirth. Or not, if you don't believe this. But within this life itself, still, are you ever free from suffering by dwelling on such matters? No, you're free from suffering by not dwelling on matters that you cannot change, but by actively doing something about changing what you can, your actions in this moment, here and now, in the present. So, we keep the precepts and those in mind, all that of doing no harm to ourselves or others, and we practice meditation. Now this gives us this understanding, we develop this wisdom. Now this will lead to Sotapanna, the first stage of enlightenment, stream entry. And I think I was asked if you can attain that through meditation alone. The answer is no, not if you're not keeping sila, because you will not attain to the high states of absorption if you cannot keep sila, because you're not creating the causes and conditions for contentment, for happiness. The Buddha taught us, first we have to be happy. We need to not go to meditation for our happiness. We can go to movies, we can go to bars, we can go to a book for distraction from pain, from suffering, and an illusion of relief from that pain or suffering, and an illusion of happiness and contentment. But we very quickly see the reality of impermanence and nature, and the unsatisfactoriness of those aspects of our lives that are trying to satisfy what is insatiable. And how our desires for those things, when are fueled by keep going out to get them through our sense doors, through our sense reception, bringing those things in, going out for more, only fuels that desire and creates more suffering. When we realize this, and we realize that going within is at first seemingly to experience more suffering, but only very quickly to experience the relief of being free from that trying to satisfy what is insatiable, and finding true contentment within through the simple process of meditation. Only through this we can become free from suffering. This is wisdom. This is the development of panya. So is that really running away? Is that escaping? When you try it, experience it for yourself, you'll see, no, it's very difficult. The running away, the escaping, is staying in samsara. Is staying in with worldly options and what is available, especially now, and in most societies there are opportunities for so much distraction. And of course there are also societies that are suffering considerably too. But whether we're in a very wonderful situation or a very, very difficult situation, what remains the same is what we are. This physical body and this thinking brain, but all that it experiences. And in meditation, that can be consistent. It can be the same, whatever our external experiences are, because we're not going out for our distraction, for our pleasure, but we're not also going in to hide. We're going in to see the truth, to see the reality, realize the Four Noble Truths, realize that it's up to us, and realize that these bodies of ours, or this personality, is just that, a physical collection of atoms and no more. We'll realize in time also that time is a mere convention too, and therefore from one moment to the next there is nothing that's ever changing. It is just a convention. So nothing matters. But we can change our futures, so the results that come from our actions, by basing those actions on moral virtue, of a sense of no harm to others or to ourselves, with those 5 precepts. So this is why it's so important. I was trying to recall there if there was another, what do we call it, missive, a big statement or something like this that I've received recently. There was one I couldn't really understand, but again it was by way comparison, comparing this practice in a positive way to that of other religions which are theistic, or where they have even more than one god, gods involved. But of course this also isn't necessary to be done, shouldn't be done, because Buddhism is not atheist in that it says there are no gods. It doesn't deny gods. In Buddhist cosmology there are many and different realms, heavenly realms and hell realms. But like samsara, or like the human realms, because they include those heavenly realms and hell realms are included in samsara, the cycle of rebirth, as are the gods, they are all impermanent too. All conditioned things are impermanent, and by conditioned, that is, they are conventions, the results of the causes and conditions put in place. Other than that which is ultimately to be attained, which is nirvana, which is unconditioned, indescribable in that sense, because it doesn't fall into what we can explain, or but can be experienced and known by not vijnana as in consciousness, as in the thinking brain consciousness working with regards to the physical body and the senses of seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting and touching, but that which knows impassively the purity of non-conventional, unconditioned, and what the Buddha termed as the deathless state. This is the final attainment of enlightenment that one can achieve. And a very long way off just some meditative phenomena that people experience through their practice of meditation, or indeed the joy and pleasure that people can experience through non-meditative practices like entertainment, or even bad practices like drugs and alcohol can bring temporary phenomena that are seemingly enjoyable but ultimately harmful. It isn't comparable to that. But to experience it in conjunction with sila, meditation, samadhi and panya, wisdom, is how we can become free from suffering in this lifetime. Cutting those fetters, finally pulling them out by the root. But it's hard work. It cannot be given to you, you cannot give it to someone else. But you can, by way of example, show others. So I hope there's something useful there, and you can continue with your practice bearing that in mind. If it's useful, yes, please use it, and if not, just let it go. Thank you for watching. Be happy and stay well. Sukhi Hotu.